Valentine's Day wasn't always romantic. In the 1800s, thousands of people received anonymous Valentine cards designed to humiliate them. Not flirt with them, humiliate them. Some were so cruel, they started real-life fights. But to understand why these cards existed, we need to go back to a time when people searched for love in newspapers, and sometimes found something far worse. Think dating in 2026 is a nightmare? Ghosting, catfishing, and endless swiping? Well, welcome to 1880, where the nightmare was just as real, but much more permanent.
A gentleman of 35, with a good farm and a kind heart, wishes to marry. I don't care much for beauty, but the lady must have a good set of teeth, as I hate to see a woman gumming her food.
Young man, income $2,000 a year, looking for a wife. Important, she must be an orphan. I've had enough of other people's mothers-in-law to last a lifetime.
No photos, no flirting, no second chances. You had a few inches of newspaper space and the cold, hard courage to describe exactly what kind of human being you were willing to tolerate for the rest of your life. But if you sent the wrong message, you might receive a Vinegar Valentine in return, a card designed specifically to tell you how ugly or annoying you are.
Your nose is so long, it's a public disgrace. There isn't much room for the rest of your face.
Let's look at the original Tinder found in the dusty archives of the Victorian press. Before dating apps, before social media, before even casual dating as we know it, newspapers quietly became one of the most important tools for finding a life partner, especially in Britain and the United States. These were called matrimonial advertisements, short, carefully worded personal ads placed in newspapers by men and women searching for a spouse. Back then, marriage was not primarily about romance. It was about economics, reputation, and survival. It was a contract. Men listed their sheep and their sobriety. Women listed their age and their ability to sew. Some of these ads sounded more like job postings than romantic requests. A typical ad might read like this.
A respectable gentleman, age 32, owner of a small farm, 5 cows, steady income, seeks a modest young woman of good character.
Will you write to a young widow worth $35,000?
In today's terms, that's like opening a dating profile with your net worth in the bio. But the deeper you dig into these archives, the weirder it gets. People didn't hide their flaws. They used them as selling points.
Wanted to make an acquaintance of a loving young lady between 20 and 30 years of age. Between 20 preferred. Must be beautiful and able to make her own clothes. Apply at the Campesca Hotel at noon while the boss is at dinner.
A widow of means, 40 years old, tired of being alone, seeking a husband who is handsome and strong. Money not required. I have enough for both, but he must promise not to ask where I spent my first husband's fortune.
I want a wife who is not afraid of work. She must know how to milk, wash, mend, and keep her tongue still when I'm tired. One-legged man, respectable and hard-working, seeks a wife. Love is not promised, but fairness is.
A timid young man in retiring disposition and rather delicate desires to meet a young lady who would make a good nurse. Nice-looking widow preferred, in case I should pass away.
Wanted, a young lady who can help we make up $50,000 for a proper wedded life. I can put in $50 toward the desired sum.
And while many of these ads led to marriage, some led somewhere far darker, like Belle Gunness. Belle Gunness is suspected of murdering more than 40 people, making her one of the most prolific female killers in U.S. history. Beginning in 1905, she placed matrimonial ads in Midwestern newspapers, inviting prosperous widowers to join her. Each arrived with cash. None were seen again. Some had told friends they were leaving to get married. None of them ever came home. Investigators later exhumed dozens of dismembered bodies and remains from shallow graves and a hog pen on her farm. The newspapers that once connected lonely hearts had unknowingly become a hunting ground. And Belle Gunness was not an isolated case. She was simply the most extreme. While Belle Gunness worked alone, others turned matrimonial ads into organized crime. These were known as marriage syndicates. Their method was simple and terrifyingly effective. A group of scammers would place carefully crafted ads in multiple newspapers. They posed as wealthy bachelors or respectable widows. Once a target responded, the correspondence began. Letters, promises, plans for marriage. Then came the requests. Money for travel, money for legal paperwork, money for emergencies. Always temporary, always urgent. Nothing déjà vu about this? The Tinder swindler? By the late Victorian era, those few inches of newspaper space had become a symbol not only of the hope for happiness, but of a lurking, deadly danger. Love was effectively put up for sale, and the price of admission often proved to be far too high. But sometimes, these advertisements received a response no one expected. Not a love letter, not a proposal, an insult. The original anonymous hate of the Victorian era.
How could you send this dreadful thing? Everyone knows
Vinegar
what it
Valentines.
implies. I sent nothing of the sort.
Imagine it's 1850. You hear a knock at the door. The postman hands you a colorful envelope. But there's a small detail. In many cases, the person receiving the letter had to pay the postage. So before you even know what's inside, you pay to receive it. You open the envelope, expecting a love letter. Instead, you find this.
You dream of love and wedding day, but none would have you anyway. Too plain, too dull, too hard to please. Resign yourself to spinster's ease.
Not a joke. Not a private insult. A professionally printed card, designed to humiliate you. Welcome to the world of Vinegar Valentines. By the mid-19th century, Valentine's Day had become a massive commercial event in both Britain and the United States. Factories printed millions of romantic cards filled with lace, poetry, and sentimental imagery. But alongside the sweet and romantic Valentines, there existed something far darker. Cheap, mass-produced, anonymous. Cards created specifically to insult the recipient. They were called Vinegar Valentines, because instead of sweetness, they delivered pure acid. These cards featured grotesque illustrations and short rhyming poems that mocked the person receiving them. Their appearance, their profession, their social status. Nothing was off limits, and they sold in huge numbers. Some targeted men. One card showed a badly dressed gentleman staring into a mirror.
Behind your desk you proudly sit, as if you were a king. But everyone knows perfectly well you're just a petty thing.
Victorian humor could be merciless. Most Vinegar Valentines were sent anonymously. You rarely knew who had mailed it. A coworker, a neighbor, a rejected admirer, someone playing a cruel joke. This uncertainty made them even more disturbing. Because the insult didn't just hurt, it created suspicion. Postal workers reportedly disliked delivering Vinegar Valentines, not because they were illegal, but because they often caused real emotional distress. Arguments, public embarrassment, sometimes even physical confrontations. Valentine's Day could become a day of anxiety rather than romance. So why did people buy them? For almost the same reason people write hateful comments online today. Anonymity, distance, no responsibility, and the strange comfort of knowing you won't have to face the person you hurt. Just like modern comment sections, Vinegar Valentines allowed people to express irritation, jealousy, or cruelty without consequences. No profile picture, no confrontation, no accountability. Just a printed insult and the satisfaction of sending it. The Victorian era didn't invent anonymous hate. It simply delivered it by mail instead of Wi-Fi. And yet, people kept sending them. By the late 1800s, millions of Vinegar Valentines circulated every year. Entire printing businesses thrived on manufacturing elaborate insults. Some newspapers even criticized the trend, calling it cowardly and cruel. But the cards remained popular, because anonymity makes cruelty easy. In the 19th century, it took effort to design, print, and mail an insult. Today, it takes seconds. But the feeling on the receiving end is probably the same. So this Valentine's Day, if you don't receive a card at all, you might actually be lucky. Because 150 years ago, the worst thing you could receive wasn't silence. It was a Valentine. And honestly, some traditions never really disappear. They just move online. If you enjoyed this dive into the darker side of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Would you rather receive no Valentine at all, or a Vinegar Valentine?